everyone, it's Coach Fred here, and today I'm going to be going over section 1.3, segments and their measure. And I do want you to start the warm-up on the top of the page. Go ahead and do that, and then we're going to get started. So today we're going to be talking about distance. And so when we talk about distance, like if you're driving in a car, the distance is how far you've traveled, right? How far you travel. Well, distance on a number line, again, is actually the length. Oops, I spelled that wrong. The length of the segment, okay? So when we're looking for the distance between 2 points, we're looking for the length of the segment. So let's look at this number line I gave here. I labeled each of the coordinate points. So these are all the coordinates, -3, -2, -1. Those are the coordinates. And I gave them names. Those are points. Point J would have the coordinate of -3. Point M would have the coordinate of 4. So if I want to find MJ, notice there are no symbols there. It doesn't say find segment MJ because you can't find a segment. You can find the length of a segment. So if I give you MJ with no symbols, it means find the length of the segment. Okay, it means find length. Okay, well in this case, I gave you a number line. You might be tempted to just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that's great. Yes, the length of MJ, the distance between the 2 points is 7 units. But let's think about those numbers. You were at J of -3 and you were at M of 4, okay? So if you subtract the endpoints, 4 minus -3, you're going to get 7. Well, what happens if you do the other way? What happens if you do -3 minus 4? Well, then you're going to get -7, and length can't be negative. So what would you have to do? Well, you'd have to take the absolute value of that number because absolute value is distance on a number line, and we know that distance on a number line always has to be positive. So you could do it either way. One of the suggestions I always make to students is take the larger endpoint minus the smaller endpoint and subtract them, because that's always going to give me a positive, and that's the way I did it. So do larger minus smaller, and that will give you the length. Now, either way, just remember, if you get a negative length, you do have to take the absolute value. But again, we're subtracting the endpoints. But now what if I asked you to find the coordinate of the midpoint? All right, so we learned about midpoint very quickly. We talked about the definition of a midpoint. A midpoint is the middle, the exact middle of 2 points. So that means the midpoint is you're gonna have the same length on the right and the left of the segment. Okay, so how can we find the coordinate? Now I want you to think about middle. In pre-algebra, you learned about all different ways to find the middle. You learned the median, you learned the mean. Well, finding the coordinate of the midpoint is very similar to finding the mean or the average of points. So if I want to find the coordinate of the midpoint of MJ, all I'm going to do is I'm going to find their average. So let's see if that works. So to find the average of MJ, we do 4 plus, we add the endpoints, and we divide by 2. So that would give me 4 minus 3, why minus 3? Because it was a -3, divided by 2, which would give me 1/2. Okay, so let's think about that. Here is 1/2. So here's a half, and then 1, 2, 3 over to M. And then here's a half, and then 1, 2, 3 over to J. So 1/2 is the coordinate of the midpoint. Okay, so I showed you visually and I showed you mathematically. Now let's look at it without the visual. All right, so I ask you to find the distance between the coordinates on a number line. So the coordinates are -3 and 8. Okay, so remember, to find distance, we're going to subtract the numbers. So I'm going to do the larger minus the smaller. Notice that I'm getting a negative, so that's going to give me a distance of 11. All right, now if I want to find the coordinate of the midpoint, I'm going to find the average of those 2 points. Average means add them up, divide by 2. So that's going to give me -3 plus 8 divided by 2, so 5 over 2, 5 halves, which is 2.5. So the coordinate of the midpoint would be 2.5. Let's check that out. Let's just test it, okay, and make sure. Here's -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so let's count the length. The length to 0 is 3 units. The length to 8 is 8 units. Add them together, you get 11. Check. Now, I'm not going to be able to do this every time because I'm using really small numbers. If you have a number line and you're looking for the distance between like -17 and 251, you really want to think about what it means to get distance. Okay. The average, or the coordinate of the midpoint. Okay, so let me erase that. And if I want the coordinate of the midpoint, I'm going to call this one x and this one y. 2.5 is right here. So that gives me a half this way, and then 5 this way, so 5.5. And this gives me a half this way, and 5 this way, so 5.5. So 2.5 is the coordinate of the midpoint. All right, 4 and -1, let's find the distance. 4 minus -1. So that becomes plus, so 5. So my distance, my length between 4 and -1 is 5 units. All right, coordinate of the midpoint. 4 plus -1, so 4 minus 1 over 2. So 4 minus 1 over 2 is 3 over 2, so 1.5. All right, guys. I want you to try. I want you to try and find the distance between these 3 points and the coordinate of the midpoint. So press pause and you can come back and check your answers. All right, so you're back. Go ahead and take a pause here. Just pause the screen and you can see all of the answers and my work and check your answers. And if you have questions, we'll review it tomorrow in class. Have a great day.